today we begin this beautiful journey of your book Moments. You have two books, Beehive and Moments. Moments is your supplementary reader. We are going to begin the very first chapter, The Lost Child by Mulk Raj Anand. Now, before we begin the beautiful journey, let me brief you about how we shall go about. So, when we begin the chapter, right, we are going to first talk about the author. We'll know a little about the author. Then we shall get the plot of the story, what exactly the story is all about, and then we shall start the actual story. The text that you see, I'll just show it to you. Like I said, about the author. Then I spoke about the plot, what you shall know what is in the story, and then you shall get the text exactly like it is in your textbook. Okay? It is absolutely the same, so you don't need a book while you are watching the video. Now you can see these highlighted words. The meanings of these highlighted words are given on the same slide. So it becomes easy for you to understand the text. Now I shall be explaining this text to you word by word, line by line. Try and understand. When you get to know the whole story, when you actually understand the whole story, you shall be able to frame your own answers. If it's a 1-mark answer, 2, 3 or 4, you shall be able to write them only after you have understood the entire story. Now, children, look, I can definitely go in Hindi as well. If I sit to explain the story in Hindi, the problem is when you sit to write your answers, you will look for the English words. You will not be able to frame a good answer. So I'd suggest I shall speak in English. I shall explain in simple English so that you understand. At times, I will also, if there are certain words which require Hindi explanation, yes, I will. But remember, I am only doing it for your benefit. The more you listen now, right now you are in grade 9. So the more you listen, your listening will be strong, your speaking will be stronger, and your writing also. So please, it's very important. You have to actually first start listening to any language to become a good speaker. Instead of joining personality development classes or the spoken English classes to enhance your English, let's do it here. You listen to every word that I speak, and then you try writing your answers. Trust me, it will be a big difference. It will make a very good difference, and you shall notice that. Yes? So let's begin this beautiful journey of your Moments book with the very first chapter, The Lost Child by Mulk Raj Anand. Off we go. So about the author, Mulk Raj Anand was a prominent Indian author of novels, short stories and critical essays in English. He was the son of a coppersmith. Anand graduated with honours in 1924 from Punjab University in Lahore and pursued additional studies at the University of Cambridge and at University College in London. Anand first gained wide recognition for his novels Untouchable and Coolie, both of which examine the problems of poverty in Indian society. So here we know actually the background of the author. Imagine he was the son of a coppersmith. Now, in spite of being, a son of such a poor man, he yet made it so big. That's his journey. These success stories should actually motivate you that in spite of having any problems in life, you can make your way to success. Right? Isn't it? You definitely can. So yeah, let's move on to the plot. Let's understand what the story is about. In The Lost Child, a child goes to see the village fair in the company of his father and mother. He's going to a fair, Mela. He is attracted by different things in the fair. He asks his parents again and again to buy him something or the other, but they don't buy anything for him. Now, as a child, he'll say, Mama, mujhe ye bhi chahiye, Mama, mujhe wo bhi chahiye. But as a parent, as a mother or a father, you know what you're supposed to buy and what you are not supposed to buy, and how many things can you buy for him, right? It all depends. By chance, the child gets separated from his parents. Ab mela hai to khona hai to hai. He got lost. He actually got lost because it was very crowded. He starts to run here and there shouting for his parents. The poor child, he was nervous. He was panicky. Imagine such a small child and not having parents around. He was very scared and he started crying loudly. A kind man sees him. He tries to console the child. One man in the fair, he sees that this poor child is crying, he's lost his parents, so he tries to make him quiet. He takes him to different shops. He tells him, "Acha beta ye le lo, acha beta aapko ye chahiye, aap ye le lo, but first you stop crying." But the child goes on weeping. He's crying and crying and crying. Now he has lost interest in everything. He does not even want his favorite things. He only cries, "I want my mother, I want my father." For a child, the world, the world is his parents. Their parents are the world for the child. So whatever the child, be it whatever, ultimately at the end of everything, the child wants his parents. So let's hear the story in detail, and all of you, please stay glued, right? Just stay there, watch the entire video, and you shall understand the whole story so properly, so crystal clear, that you shall never have to repeat, doing this again before your exams even. You will be so thorough, so clear, and you are done. You are sorted even for your exams. So don't worry, just be wise and keep listening. It was the festival of spring. We know spring, the festival of, this spring, it comes after winter. It is followed by spring, the winter. From the wintry shades of narrow lanes, wintry as in the characteristic of winter, narrow lanes and alleys, emerged a gaily clad humanity in a very cheerful or a light-hearted way. So you could see all people all coming very happy. Some walked, some rode on horses, others sat, being carried in bamboo and bullock carts. Now here he is giving you the scene where people are heading towards a fair. Everyone is happy and they are going there in different ways. Some are walking, some are on their horses, some are even in the bullock carts. One little boy ran between his father's legs, brimming over with life and laughter. Now, between all these people, among all these people, there was this little boy who ran. Brimming means full of a particular quality. He was brimming over with life and laughter. He was a very happy child, a very cheerful child. And he was playing, he was running around in between his dad's legs. "Come, child, come," called his parents, as he lagged behind, fascinated by the toys in the shops that lined the way. Now, he was a child, so, while he was walking, there were shops on both the sides, and he could see there were toy shops as well. So, while walking, he's walking, and the parents have gone in the front. So, every time he was lagging behind, he was staying behind. He was away from his parents. Why? Because his mind, his eyes were in the toy shop. Every time he did that, and he was behind, all the shops that were there on that road, he kept looking and he was really interested in them. He hurried towards his parents. He saw then when his parents called, again he would hurry to them. His feet obedient to their call. Very beautifully put. His feet were obedient. They were very obedient. So the moment the parents would call, the feet would start running towards them. His eyes still lingering on the receding toys. Now the feet were there, but the eyes and the heart was where? There, at the toys. They were lingering as in lasting for a long time or slow to an end. Your eyes are there, and which are the receding toys? Moving further. So as he was going, those toys were there, so his eyes were there, right? But the feet were obedient. As he came to where they had stopped to wait for him, he could not suppress the desire of his heart. Even though he well knew the old cold stare of refusal in their eyes, "I want that toy," he pleaded. Now, he was so fascinated, he really liked that toy so much. So the moment he went to his parents where they were waiting for him, and he knew it. Because that was the case which has been with him always. So he knew it. When I would go and tell them, they would just look at me and they would do that, old cold refusal. But still, being a child, he said, "No, I want that toy, please." He literally pleaded. His father looked at him red-eyed in his familiar tyrant's way. His father would look at him red-eyed with anger. Red-eyed as in all the anger, you say your eyes become red. In his familiar tyrant's way, person exercising power or control in a cruel or arbitrary way. Now he was the father, so he was the controller. So the moment he looked at him, with all the power and he's just looking at him in anger, and he says, "No." That's because this poor child would always experience the same. His mother, melted by the free spirit of the day, was tender, and giving him her finger to hold, said, "Look, child, what is before you." Now, to a good extent, mothers, they play a very smart role here. When they see now the father is angry and the child has asked for something, so she did not want to spoil the child's mood, and at the same time, she had to make sure that she's taking care of her husband's anger. It should not explode. So what she does is, she was actually enjoying that ambience everywhere. Everyone was in such a good mood, and she was full of kindness and she was full of affection. She was in a very cool mood. So she says, "Don't worry." So what she did, she showed her finger to the child. She said, "Okay, you hold my hand. Come here, see, I'll show you something really beautiful." It was a flowering mustard field, pale like melting gold, as it swept across miles and miles of even land. This is the view she wanted to show the child. Now, a child's mind is very, it's full of distractions. But they are very short distractions. They don't stay for a long time. Now, she distracted him from the toys. She showed him this. So here, when he saw this, he became happy here. It's, a very smart trick every mother plays. If you want your child to move away from something, show him something better. That's the trick. You should apply, and it's a wise thing to do. The child will not cry, and even you are okay with it, right? You don't want that to happen, so it didn't happen. Just show him something better. Show him something else, and the child's mood just gets distracted within no time. So this is what she shows him. She says, "Just look at this. It's so beautiful." And the child sees this, and what happens is he forgets his toys. A group of dragonflies were bustling about on their gaudy purple wings, intercepting the flight of a lone black bee or butterfly in search of sweetness from the flowers. Now what he saw, he did not see the flowers, actually what his mom was trying to show, but what did he see? He saw a group of dragonflies. Now that attracted him. There were a lot of dragonflies over there. They were bustling. They were full of activity. They were all over that farm. And on their gaudy purple wings, intercepting as in obstructing. What were they obstructing? What were they stopping? The flight of a lone black bee. There was a black bee, which was just one single black bee or butterfly that was in search of sweetness from the flowers. They were trying to stop that bee. So, that activity was happening like a game over there. So, the child started watching that and he forgot the toys. The child followed them in the air with his gaze. Wherever they went, his eyes was going there. Till one of them would sit still its wings and rest. Now, till one of them would actually, stop. It would still its wings. It would stop its wings and rest, and he would try to catch it. They stopped and he tried to catch that. But it would go fluttering and flapping up into the air when he had almost caught it in his. The moment he went very close, he just would try to catch and they would fly away. So he enjoyed that. Then his mother gave a cautionary call. Cautionary as a warning. She says, be careful. Come child, come on to the footpath. She says, okay, now we have to continue. We can't stop here. You are enjoying playing, but now we are going to the fair. So let's move on. So, she just calls out to him, okay, now come on, you're done. Now let's go. Come on to the footpath. Footpath, we all know, is the pavement where we walk. He ran towards his parents gaily, happily. So you see the child is back to normal again. And walked abreast of them for a while. He went side by side. He was walking with them for a while, being, however, soon left behind. Now again he is left behind for what? Attracted by the little insects and worms along the footpath that were teeming out from their hiding places to enjoy the sunshine. Now you see how this curious mind is, no? Suddenly he looks here, he enjoys that. He looks here, he enjoys that. He is so lost. Yeah? So what now? He walked with the parents a little while. Now what next? He saw little insects and worms along the footpath. He saw some worms and all along the footpath that were teeming out. Teeming out as in they were swarming out. They were all coming out from their hiding places to enjoy the sunshine. It was spring. It was beautiful. So even the insects and worms wanted to enjoy it. So they were coming out and suddenly he saw them. Come child, come, his parents called from the shade of a grove where they had seated themselves on the edge of a well. Now they were walking. So somewhere they had to take some rest. So now they let him play for some time. They saw and again they called him. Okay, let's go now. Grove is a small wood or a group of trees. So they were, walking in that shade. So they went there and they had seated themselves where? On the edge of a well. There was a well and on the edge they had taken some rest on it. He ran towards them. Very sweet child, wasn't he? He ran towards them. He did not say anything. He saw that and he just kept moving on. A shower of young flowers fell upon the child as he entered the grove, and forgetting his parents, he began to gather the raining petals in his hands. So as the child went towards the parents, suddenly there were flowers falling from the tree. It was spring. Let me remind you, that indicates spring, right? So there were some petals that fell on him and he forgot the parents and he started collecting those raining petals. But lo, he heard the cooing of doves and ran towards his parents shouting, "The dove, the dove!" The raining petals dropped from his forgotten hands. You see how from one to the other, to the other, to the other, and so on. Now, from the worms came the flowers, from the flowers came the dove. Now, he forgot that also. He forgot the petals and he heard the cooing of the dove. And he says, "Oh, the dove, the dove." He went running to his parents. The raining petals dropped from his forgotten hands. He left that there only within no time. And now he started going towards the dove. "Come, child, come," they called to the child, who had now got running in wild capers round the banyan tree, and gathering up, they took the narrow winding footpath which led to the fair through the mustard fields. Now he was done, he was running round. Now he saw a banyan tree. And what he did, he started running in wild capers, as in playful skipping movement. He was jumping, he was skipping in that movement. He went round and round the banyan tree, and then gathering him up. Now they took him from there. They took the narrow winding footpath, following a twisting or a spiral course. It was a narrow winding, there was a small turn. It was very narrow, it was very thin. which led, now that road led to the fair through the mustard field. There were fields over there, and through that the road was passing, and it was leading them to the fair where they actually were going. As they neared the village, the child could see many other footpaths full of throngs. As they, went near the fair, as they were entering, the village where the fair was, he could see many other footpaths full of throngs. Throngs as in large, densely packed crowds of people or animals. Now the rush started increasing. It started crowding because they were getting closer to the fair. So he could see many people and animals converging to the whirlpool of the fair. Whirlpool as in a quickly rotating mass. Now, you can see that whole thing, that full fair, how it is, everyone is going round to all the different stalls. So it was like a whirlpool mass. And felt at once repelled. Repelled as in he drove or forced back away. He was repelled and fascinated by the confusion of the world he was entering. It was like a different world. Now he's such a tiny tot, one chotu sa bachcha, and so many people. So it looked like a world, like the world to him. Yeah, and it was a full, melee ka mahal. How it is, no? It's totally different. Yeah, so we've all been to a fair, we've seen how noisy, people shouting, vendors shouting from their stalls, le lo, and this one is saying, this is for 5 rupees, this is for 10 rupees, everyone's screaming, people shouting at the rides, those who are, enjoying their rides, they are screaming. So that, that whole ambience is so different. A sweetmeat seller hawked as in he carried about and offered goods for sale, advertising by shouting. A hawker is the one who carries, he carries the goods on his head and he goes around selling. That's a hawker. He is different from a vendor. What do you mean by a vendor? A vendor has a shop. He is in one place, people come to him. Whereas hawker moves around in places and he goes to the people. That's the difference in a hawker and a vendor. Both are selling the products, right? But it is in a different manner. So, a sweetmeat seller, mithai wala, he hawked gulab jamun, rasgulla, barfi, jalebi at the corner of the entrance, and a crowd pressed round his counter at the foot of an architecture of many colored sweets decorated with leaves of silver and gold. Now he was screaming all his different mithais, all the sweets that he was selling. Muh mein pani aa gaya, even mine. Gulab jamun, rasgulla, barfi, jalebi, he was shouting, and then everyone came and, they were all round his counter. Why? Because he had decorated it so well. How he had decorated his counter at the foot of an architecture of many colored sweets. There were many different colored sweets decorated with leaves of silver and gold. So that's why there were many people around him. The child stared open-eyed. He is like, wow. And his mouth watered for the barfi. That was his favorite sweet. Now, barfi was his favorite. Now, this can come as 1 mark. So, please keep that in mind. Yeah, his favorite sweet. Now, you also have to remember one more thing. So, as he started the journey, what distracted him first? Now, there were certain things that distracted him on the way to the fair. Yeah, on the way to the fair, there were many things that distracted. The dragonflies, the toy shop, all that, the worms, all of those distracted him. But when he reached the fair, what were the things that distracted him? So we are beginning with this sweetmeat, So it starts with kuch meetha ho jaye. So remember that we started with the sweetmeat. So that was his first distraction in the fair, when he was at the fair. Yeah, I want that barfi, he slowly murmured. Very slowly he said, I want that barfi. But he half knew as he begged that his plea would not be heeded, that his request, the plea was a request, will not be paid attention to, because his parents would say He was greedy. So everything you want, just come on from here. So, without waiting for an answer, he moved on. He knew it, that the parents would say, oh, you're greedy, you want everything you see you want. And so without waiting for their yes or no, he knew half-heartedly it is a no. Without waiting, he just moved on. He said, just forget it. I know it's not going to happen, so just let's move on. A flour seller hawked. Now a sweetmeat seller, now it's a flour seller. So let's remember the sequence so that we don't miss on anything, because for your answers, you need to know it. So a flour seller hawked. He cried out, a garland of gul mohar, a garland of gul mohar. You can see these gul mohar flowers. The child seemed irresistibly drawn. He just could not resist it in a way that is too attractive and tempting to be resisted. You could not, it was so colorful, it was so beautiful, the flowers were so fresh. He was just looking at those flowers. So he kept staring at those, those garlands. He went towards the basket where the flowers lay heaped and half murmured, I want that garland. Now, as a child, he wanted to, everything he was coming across, he wanted. But he well knew his parents would refuse to buy him those flowers. Now, he knew that also, that I am asking, but I know they will say no. Because they would say that they were cheap. They were not really right to buy, so just leave them. They're just cheap. So, without waiting for an answer, he moved on. So the same thing. Now for the flowers, they are going to tell him that they are very cheap, so forget it. What did they tell him for the sweets? That you're being greedy. They didn't really say it, but that was the answer expected. He knew it, right? So before they could say anything, he moved on further. And what was the next attraction? Oh, wow. He saw them finally, and something I'm sure which he would really, really want. A man stood holding a pole. A pole is like a stick. Yellow, red, green and purple balloons flying from it. The child was simply carried away by the rainbow glory of their silken colors, and he was filled with an overwhelming desire to possess them all. Now, he saw all the colorful balloons right in front of him. And balloons are, the children's favorite. They always want one. The moment he saw them, he literally wanted all of them. They were so beautiful. Their colors were so soft and they were lustrous like silk. So they were so attractive. They were so colorful that he just wanted all of them. But, as always, he well knew his parents would never buy him the balloons. Why? Because they would say he was too old to play with such toys. So he walked on further. He kept killing his desires. From the sweet, he came to the next where he saw, those flowers. And from the flowers, he came to the balloons. But he let go all of them because he knew what the father and the mother would say. So you remember all the three places, you remember all the three excuses. Let's move to the next. A snake charmer stood playing a flute to a snake which coiled itself in a basket. It was round and round in the basket, its head raised in a graceful bend like the neck of a swan, while the music stole into its invisible ears like the gentle rippling of an invisible waterfall. Now, what did he come across next after the balloons? He came across a snake charmer. You can see that's a snake charmer. You can see the snake which is sitting round. He's coiled in the basket and his head is up like a swan. Okay? And when he was playing the music. So where did that music go? It stole into its invisible ears. Have you seen a snake with ears? They are invisible, but he can hear. Like the gentle rippling of an invisible waterfall. Just like a waterfall is not visible, but you can hear the rippling, the falling of water. Likewise, the snake could hear the sound of the flute, though he did not have the ears. The child went towards the snake charmer, but knowing his parents had forbidden him to hear such coarse music, such rough or such harsh music as the snake charmer played, he proceeded further. Now, he knew when he went to the snake charmer, suddenly, see, this child is very well trained, you know. He knows what is good and what is bad for him. He remembers all the lessons taught to him by his parents. So when he went there, he remembered that he is not supposed to hear to this music. That music was very harsh, you know, which the snake charmer was playing. So he just let it be and he went on further. Obviously, he did not ask for the snake. There was a roundabout in full swing. Now he came across this roundabout. Men, women and children carried away in a whirling motion as in a circular motion, in a round motion, and shrieked and cried with dizzy laughter. They were shrieking, they were really screaming loudly. They shrieked and they cried with dizzy, you know, they were having a sensation of dizziness. Their head was spinning, it was going round and round. So, you know, because this swing was going round and round, they had the dizziness and they were screaming. We've all done it. We've sat in a giant wheel, we've sat in a roller coaster. How many of you have? I have once. Never again. So yeah, but this is dizziness. This is something that goes round and round. So this was it. Now, there was no reply. Obviously, he wanted to sit on it. He turned to look at his parents. He turned to look, you know, that why aren't they reverting? They were not there ahead of him. They were not there. He turned to look on either side. He looked everywhere that where are they? He couldn't find them. They were not there. He looked behind. There was no sign of them. He looked everywhere, all around him. In all directions, he tried to find his parents, but he couldn't find them. Now remember, after that whole journey, when he comes to the roundabout swing, that is the time he realizes that his parents are not around him. This is the time he gets to know. A full deep cry rose within his dry throat, and with a sudden jerk of his body, he ran from where he stood, crying in real fear, "Mother, Father." Now, he suddenly, you know, he gave a deep cry. I mean, he just screamed out. His throat was dry because he had not taken water since long. And with a sudden jerk, he quickly just moved and he just ran in all directions, screaming for his mother and father. Tears rolled down from his eyes. He started crying, hot and fierce. Hot tears. Now, tears are generally hot, but this is what it's showing, his emotions. His flushed face was convulsed with fear. It suffered a violent, involuntary contraction of the muscles because he was scared. He had a very fearful look, a very scary look. Why? Because suddenly he realized that he is alone among so many people. There were throngs of them. There were so many of them. And he, this little tiny tot, stood in the middle with no one with him. He was absolutely alone. Now, a child of his age definitely is always either with the mother or the father or both. But at that point of time, there was no one. And because there was no one, he realized that, oh my God, I'm alone, I'm lost. And so his face was so scary. He started screaming, he started calling out to his parents, and he started looking for them in all directions. Panic-stricken, all in chaos and confusion, what to do, where to go, where to find them. He ran to one side first, then to the other, hither and thither. Hither and thither as in various directions, in all directions, especially in a disorganized way. He just went here and there. In all directions, knowing not where to go. Mother, father, he wailed. He wailed as in he made a prolonged, high-pitched sound. He literally called very loudly. His yellow turban came untied and his clothes became muddy. That's the turban on the head. Okay. Now because he was screaming, he was running here and there, the turban also opened up and his clothes had also become dirty. They had become muddy. Having run to and fro, having run, in a constant movements forward, backward, side to side, in every direction, in a rage of running for a while, in that, vehement desire or passion, in that fear of running for a while, he stood defeated. He ran how much he could. He saw them everywhere he could. But now he stood in one place, realizing that I have lost them. His cries suppressed into sobs. The way he was crying out loudly, the way he was calling out, now they became low and they became sobs. What are sobs? That. So when a child cries a lot, after crying a lot, this is what he lands up doing. He sobs. So that's the difference between sob and cry. Cry is when you really cry, and sob is when you take these short breaths. At little distances on the green grass, he could see through his filmy eyes, men and women were talking. Now, at a little distance from where he was standing on the green grass, he could see through his filmy eyes, covered with or as if with a thin layer of something. Now, filmy eyes was, he had tears. His eyes were filled with water. The men and women talking. He tried to look intently among the patches of bright yellow clothes. Intently, with earnest attention, he tried to look over there. Can he spot his father and mother? But there was no sign of his father and mother among those people who seemed to laugh and talk just for the sake of laughing and talking. Now, everyone has met in a fair. They've just come for fun. So, they were doing time pass. They were all there and they were just enjoying themselves. He ran quickly again, this time to a shrine. Shrine is a temple, to which people seemed to be crowding. Many people were going towards that temple. So, he also went there. Every little inch of space here was congested with men, but he ran through the people's legs, his little sob lingering, mother, father. Now, that place was heavily crowded. It was a temple. It was so congested, as in it was crowded with people, as to prevent freedom of movement. Everyone was jam-packed in that temple. There was no place to move. But because he was short, he was tiny, so he was going through the people's legs. And they were all men over there. And he kept crying, mother, father. Near the entrance to the temple, however, the crowd became very thick. Now, there were too many people. Men jostled each other. They were literally, as in jostling, you push, you go from here, you go from there, you try to find a way. Heavy men with flashing, murderous eyes and hefty shoulders. All big men and, broad shoulders and, scary eyes. All of them were there. And what will this poor child do? The poor child struggled to thrust away between their feet, but knocked to and fro by their brutal movements, he might have been trampled underfoot had he not shrieked at the highest pitch of his voice, "Father, mother!" Now, those people were so huge. They were there with those broad shoulders, and he tried to push himself inside. He was actually knocked by their movements were so, brutal. They were like killing movements. They could have literally stamped over him. Trampled as in stamped over him. See, tread on or crushed. Had he not shrieked, if he had not screamed loudly, father and mother, by then they would have not realized that there is a child passing by, and they would have trampled him. They would have literally stepped on the child with their foot. A man in the surging crowd, surging as in the increasing suddenly, the crowd which was increasing suddenly, he heard the cry of that child, and stooping with great difficulty, bending forward with great difficulty, he lifted him up in his arms. How did you get here, child? Whose baby are you? The man asked as he steered clear of the mass. Now, suddenly that man saw this guy crying. So, he just, with great difficulty, he pulled him up in his arms and he started asking him questions that how did you get in here? Whose baby? Where are your parents? And he started to move the people. The child wept more bitterly, more in a very hurting manner. He was very hurt than ever now, and he only cried, I want my mother, I want my father. He says, look, I know nothing but I want my parents. The man tried to soothe him as in he, tried to reduce the pain or the discomfort. He tried to cool him down so that he stops crying. By taking him to the roundabout, he says, okay, now look, you want to go on this? See this. So again, he also, another wise person like the mother, started distracting his mind from where? From crying. So he said, oh, this is the roundabout. You want to go in this? Will you have a ride on the horse? He gently asked as he approached the ring, as he approached the swing. The child's throat tore into 1,000 shrill sobs. Shrill as in a high-pitched and piercing. He was still screaming at the top of his voice and he only shouted, I want my mother, I want my father. He was only screaming. He did not even look at the swing. He did not look at that ring where, the man brought him. He did not want any ride on the horse. He wanted his parents. The man headed towards the place. Now, before I go on, I want to bring this to your notice. Did you realize this was the same roundabout the man brought him, where he actually wanted to go on. He wanted the horse ride, but his parents were not there. That is the time, but he wanted to go. Now, this man actually brought him there for the ride. He told him, do you want a horse ride? That time, because he was troubled, he was worried, he was scared that his parents, he's lost his parents. So that was more important to him than the ride. He did not say, oh yes, of course I wanted the ride. Please take me, please take me. No, he didn't do that. He was okay not going on the ride. Why? Because first and foremost, very importantly, he was looking for his parents. He wanted his parents. So now see the child. How important. Now here is the importance of the ride or the parents. Where is the importance going? To the parents. Perfect. So the man headed towards the place where the snake charmer still played on the flute to the swaying cobra. Swaying as in it was moving, slowly and rhythmically backwards and forwards or side to side. You're swaying. You sway to the music. When you hear music, this is what we do. We sway. So, the cobra, listen to that nice music, child, he pleaded. Again, this is the same place where he had stopped before. What is his reaction? But the child shut his ears with his fingers and shouted his double-pitched strain. He shouted way more. Double-pitched as in using a lot of force. I want my mother, I want my father, I don't want any of this. I want them. The man took him near the balloons, thinking the bright colors of the balloons would distract the child's attention and quieten him. He says maybe if he sees the balloons, he might get distracted and at least he'll stop shouting, at least he'll stop crying. Would you like a rainbow-colored balloon? He persuasively asked, as in a very convincing manner. Do you want this? I'll buy you. You want this? What was the reaction? The child turned his eyes from the flying balloons and just sobbed. I want my mother, I want my father. Now, where is the importance going? The same things, the swing, the snake charmer, the balloons, exactly the same things where he had stopped, which he wanted, which he knew his parents would refuse. He is getting them all now. But is he ready to take it? No. Why? Because more important than these things, he is missing his parents. He wants his parents. So if the parents are there, these things are really beautiful. If not, first he wants his parents. The man, still trying to make the child happy, bore him to the gate. He took him to the gate where the flower seller sat. Exactly the same places. Look, can you smell those nice flowers, child? Would you like a garland to put round your neck? Do you want that garland? Remember, he had asked for the garland. The child turned his nose away from the basket and reiterated his sob. He actually said something again a number of times. And what was that? The same old dialogue. I want my mother, I want my father. Thinking to humor his disconsolate charge by a gift of sweets. Now he said, okay, now let me comply with someone's wishes to keep them content. Let me try something else to console him, to make him quiet, to distract him. Let me try, going for getting him sweets. The man took him to the counter of the sweet shop. What sweets would you like, child? He asked. He says, do you want any kind of sweets from here? The child turned his face from the sweet shop and only sobbed. I want my mother, I want my father. The child was stuck to the same dialogue. He was totally disconsolate, as in he was very unhappy and unable to be comforted. That man could not stop him from crying, from, screaming the same dialogue again and again. He found it. He showed him, he tried various ways. But he could not. Now, what does that tell you? Like I told you, it is all about parents. He got those same things again, but he did not want them. Why? Because his heart lied with the parents. When the parents are there, everything was okay for him. But the moment he got away from his parents, everything seemed nothing to him. They actually had no value. It was the value when they were all valued when he was with his parents. So you see, for a child, the parents are the world. The parents are everything for a child. Nothing on earth is way more important than the parents. So this is what we tell you to conclude the story. Parents are like God, because you want to know they are out there and you want them to think well of you. But you really only call when you need something. Very well put up by Chuck Palahniuk. He says parents are God. There's nothing more important to children, because y'all actually take your parents for granted and you call upon them only when you require something. Otherwise, you've taken them for granted. Oh yes, they are there. They are there for you. You know they are there for you. But do you really approach them? Do you really go and hug and tell your mom, I love you? Or do you go and tell her, Mom, this dish is amazingly cooked. Today this dish is awesome. You have cooked it so well. Do you ever appreciate the efforts put in by your parents? For the small child, that was the lesson. But what's for you? Do you really, actually value their worth? Do you actually make sure that you are the reason for their smile? Please do so. If it's no, please do it today, right now. Make sure you find reasons to bring a smile to them. Do it, and trust me, more than them, you will be happy. And of course, if you do it, I will be the happiest person. Yes? So for such more interesting stories, for such more interesting moral values of life, yes, along with your lessons, get the moral values of life and become great humans. Yes, for the same, keep watching and keep learning.